Welcome back, everybody, to our weekly shiur on the Parashat with the Perush of the Zera Shimshon. Tonight's shiur is Parashat Bo. We're going to be doing Derush Zayin, the seventh Derush of the Zera Shimshon. May the zechut of the Zera Shimshon be a melitz yosher for Kol Am Yisrael. Those that are single should Be'ezrat Hashem find their zivug hagun b'karov u'izmano. Those that are married should be able to have many children as the promise of the Zera Shimshon. And it's also Leilu Nishmat the Zera Shimshon himself. So the parasha says, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when giving one of the commands giving the command to Moshe Rabbeinu to go and tell Bnei Israel about the Pesach offering, the pasuk kind of changes from its routine way of speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu and telling Moshe to tell Bnei Israel. How so? It says, the pasuk says, Dabberu el kol adat Bnei Israel lemor. Dabberu, meaning you shall speak, but in plural, meaning you, plural, speak to Bnei Israel, telling them, Ba'asor lachodesh hazeh, on the 10th of this month, they shall take for themselves, they should take a sheep and they're going to shecht it and put the blood on the doorposts and so on and so forth. That was the Pesach. The first Pesach offering that the Bnei Israel gave was outside of Eretz Israel. It was before leaving Egypt. And it had its own rules and regulations. It had its own halachot. Other Pesach offerings didn't have these halachot. Other Pesach offerings that we did, we didn't have to take the blood and put it on our doorposts. Other Pesach offerings, you didn't have to take the sheep and tie it to your bed beforehand and then show, Pesach changed in history afterwards. But in this time, coming to this command, Moshe Rabbeinu is told by Hashem, not only Moshe Rabbeinu, but also Aharon HaKohen. Rashi says, V'chi Aharon medaber. Rashi asks the question, why is the pasuk saying Dabberu, plural, speak to Bnei Israel? It was supposed to be Moshe Rabbeinu speaking and giving the halachot of Pesach to Bnei Israel. Why is Aharon being included? We don't see that Aharon is the one who's doing the talking later. So what's this Dabberu? So he says, the Mefarshim have tried to understand what was really bothering Rashi to tell us, is Moshe Rabbeinu, is Aharon the one who's speaking here? What's going on? So what was bothering him? Rashi was bothered by the fact that it says Dabberu, which is Lashon Rabim, it's plural language. For if Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu that both of them should speak together, this cannot be. Why? Because it says in Tractate Megillah, in Gemara Megillah, Chaf Aleph Amud Bet, that and the Gemara Megillah discusses a lot about reading the Torah portions, writing the Torah portions, writing a Megillah, and things like that. And one of the things that the Gemara discusses is that you can't have two people saying the same Torah portion together at the same time, simply because no one's going to understand what you're saying. It's like two people speaking at the same time. It's very confusing. Even if you're completely in sync, it's still going to be confusing. So two people cannot be saying the same thing at the same time. So here he says, it can't be that Hashem wanted Moshe and Aharon to give over the command of the Pesach offering together. Why? It makes no sense. It's going to just be confusing. No one's going to understand what they're saying, what they're supposed to do. Aaron says this, Moshe says that. One person give over the halacha, right? Especially when it comes to such a difficult law, it's literally one of the first mitzvot the Bnei Israel are getting, and it was not an easy mitzvah, right? How much of it do you eat? What parts of it do you not eat? Are you allowed to leave over? Are you not allowed to leave any of the meat over? What do you do? How do you, roasting the Pesach offering itself? If you guys think it was just a roasted sheep on a skewer and everything else whoop-de-doo was fun, it wasn't. There's so many halachot. Reminds me of this comedian You can't do skewer? What did you do?
It has to be wood.
Right, I mean, a wooden skewer. It's still a skewer. Is a skewer only metal? I don't know. You're in the business. So what do you call the wooden skewer? For okay? So who's this? This comedian was talking about how if Jews actually had to celebrate like other holidays.
Oh, they don't go.
Yeah. It's like how difficult it would be, because we have rules and limitations on mamash everything. Where do you cut it from? How do you cut it? How many inches off the ground? Like, yeah, we Jews, we pride ourselves on making things difficult. It's just no, I'm kidding. But the laws of the Korban Pesach were very difficult, as he mentioned. Like, for instance, you had to have the sheep fully in its entirety after it's shechted on a wooden skewer. Could not be on a metal skewer, meaning it had to be on a live fire, barbecued. You couldn't cook it. So forget about making the Korban Pesach into a choresht. Done. It's not happening, right? Can't be choresht. It has to be barbecued. One of the reasons why it had to be barbecued, because kings don't eat choresht. Okay, maybe Persian kings did eat choresht. No, even Persian kings. Meaning, obviously, kings also had soup and choresht, right? But what it's trying to tell us, what Hashem was trying to tell us is, get ready to be kings. Kings like to barbecue stuff. Why? Because naturally, when you barbecue meat, it becomes smaller, right? It shrinks. When you make it into a stew, it kind of like opens up, it becomes more. That's why, by the way, that's where the whole stew came from. It's from like, mostly like poor countries. They couldn't feed everybody meat in the household. So it's like, put a little vegetable there, put a little beans, cholent. That's how you get cholent. That's why everybody on Shabbat's looking for the meat in the cholent. That's how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to look for the meat, but it's all potatoes. And it's all beans. That's how it was. You find whatever you got left over in the house, and you put it and you make a cholent together, right? When it came to the Korban Pesach, Hashem was saying, you're going from avdut lecharut, you're going from being slaves to freedom. You're going to be kings. You're going to start acting like it. Number one, you're not making a cholent. It's going to be a full sheep on a skewer, barbecued. Number two, no leftovers. Meaning, if you don't finish it, you don't save any for later. Why? Kings don't do that. You're going to have enough to eat always. So if there's leftovers, chas v'shalom, asur for you to eat the leftovers. You're going to burn the leftovers. Why? Because you can. It was an attitude that needed to be accompanied by the Korban Pesach to teach Am Yisrael, listen, you got to learn that you're no longer going to be avadim. By the way, one of the first things that Moshe Rabbeinu actually taught the Jews when they came out of Egypt, I don't know if we mentioned this before or not, was giving them a time to eat, because slaves, you find food, you eat it, right? So it took us time to come out of the mentality of slavery into cherut. Ask any Holocaust survivor. They all have stories about how they ate or how they saved up food under their bed, under their pillows, this and that. And for many, many years to come, they were so affected by it that they still did it. They still did it. I heard a story about this guy that his mother was a Holocaust survivor. She never left the house. She never ever left the house unless she had a sandwich in her bag. Why? Because I think something happened to her that traumatized her in the Holocaust when she was a nurse. She had some kind of a job, and one day she was walking and someone was starving and begged her for food, and she didn't have any. And by the time she came to get something for him, he died. And that traumatized her, it hurt her so much. She said, I'm never going anywhere ever without having food with me. So her trauma made her that until even in her very, very old age, she always had a sandwich or something in her bag. One time, she had a doctor's appointment. She was late. They had to rush out. And they go halfway. And she says, oh my gosh, I forgot to pack a sandwich. I need to have a sandwich. She couldn't deal with it. And the son seeing this, like, we're late for the appointment. We can't, Baruch Hashem, we can't imagine. She was hurting. So they go back, all the way back to her home. She makes a sandwich, come back. On the way back, for the first time ever, there was someone on the street that was very, very hungry and actually asked her for food. And she takes the sandwich and gives it to him. Says, you see, finally, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me the gift of being able to give it to somebody. Probably 50, 60 years after the incident. Right? So, Bnei Israel, you have to imagine, that's where we were. We were traumatized from slavery. So Hashem giving us the Korban Pesach had a lot of rules that had reasons to it. And the reasons were in order to psychologically, emotionally bring us into the new world of freedom. And not only freedom, but leadership. You're going to act like leaders. Think about the Pesach Seder. Whether you like it or not, you have to lean on the left. I don't wanna. No. Why? Because kings lean on the left. Lean on the left. It's a mentality. Drink another cup. Exactly. I don't want wine. Drink another cup. It's like, do it. Right? It's basically HaKadosh Baruch Hu really forcing us to understand that I want you to know that I've chosen you as the chosen nation and I want you to be kings. Right? So the Korban Pesach, another very interesting laws of the Korban Pesach was that, as we mentioned, it couldn't be, you had to put the skewer from one end to the other end of the animal, and it couldn't be a metal skewer. Now this is something that I myself, I think 10 years ago, finally I came to the understanding. Okay? I always had this question. Persian kebab, kubide kebab, right? Whenever I would go to my friends to like outings and stuff like that, who's got skewers? Like who? So we some of us have skewers. We, you know what I'm saying? So we would just buy beef and we would make it into like, we would put the ingredients for kebab and we would make it into burger patties and put it on a barbecue. And it never tasted the same. And it always bothered me. Like, what are we doing wrong? It's the same meat, all the same ingredients. No matter who put the ingredients in, it never tastes the same. And then you put it on those metal skewers, put it on a fire, same thing, delicioso. It's all of a sudden a world apart. Then I learned this Gemara about the Korban Pesach. And then I realized that's what it is. You see the genius of skewers, right? Metal skewers is that when you're putting the kebab, kubide, on the fire, the entire kebab is not being cooked just by the fire. The inside of the kebab is being cooked by the heat of the metal. So you're not fully barbecuing, it's 50-50. It's 50% barbecue, 50% the metal from inside, cooking it from the inside so it's juicy. Those juices from the other ingredients, not from the meat. Those juices from the other ingredients, like the onions and the garlic, those really are savory inside, and it just changes the taste. Korban Pesach couldn't be like that. Because when you do it with metal, it's considered cooking. It's no longer barbecuing, because it's cooking from inside. So there was a special command, you're only going to use wood, which was pomegranate tree wood, which is a very strong wood. You're going to put it on the wood. Why? Because the wood's not going to heat up to cook the Korban Pesach from inside. The Korban Pesach has to all cook from outside, so it's fully barbecued. Why? Because that's how kings eat. They want fully barbecued meat. So all these intricate halachot, and then some, could not have been told over to Bnei Israel by two people, because it would be too confusing. So what is this Daberu el Bnei Israel? So he says, and if you want to tell me that when it says Daberu, speak in a plural sense, it's coming to tell you Moshe Yedaber v'Aharon Yefaresh, that Moshe Rabbeinu would speak and Aharon HaKohen would explain, Moshe hayu osim lifnei Paro, as they used to do in front of Paro, right? Aharon was really like the speaker. He would speak to Paro. Moshe Rabbeinu said, I don't want to be the speaker. I'll be the leader, but Aharon will speak for me. I'll tell him what to say. He'll say, says here, no. Because if that was the case, if we're saying that Aharon would speak instead of Moshe, It should have said, Daber el kol adat Israel, kemo shemor ba'atrat hamakot. It should have just said, speak to the congregation of Israel, like it said about the other makot, other plagues. Bo'el Paro v'dibarta elav. It says, come to Paro and you speak to him. And we already knew that when Hashem is saying, Moshe, you come to Paro and you speak to him, we knew that Aaron's going to do the speaking. So there was no need for a plural tense here of daberu. Why change from the original way of telling us that one of them is speaking, if only one of them are speaking? She says, we could also suggest, Shoel bepam hazot, kalal Aharon im Moshe bedibur, that maybe this time Hashem included Aharon HaKohen in this commandment, Kemoshe peresh Rashi al pasuk vayomer Hashem Moshe ve'el Aharon, as it says in another pasuk that says Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aharon both together. Mishum hachi lo haya yachol lomar daber. Therefore, it didn't say daber, which is singular. Ben המכינמי שבפעם הזאת נצטווה גם אהרון בדיבור זה אם כן הפסוקים. Okay, so he says we can't say that because over here it's using the plural. It could have still said daber. So now he says, because if we say that Aharon HaKohen also had a commandment from Hashem to speak, which it doesn't say it here, right? Then we don't see Aharon talking. We don't see, the pasuk doesn't really tell us, by the way, Aharon did the talking. By Paro, we know Aharon did the talking because the pasukim tell us that Aharon did the talking. Here it doesn't. So it says, Ela, I love this. Ela vaday tzarich lomar, he says, we have to say, the answer is, Shema shomer hakatuv daberu belashon rabim, the fact that the pasuk says daberu in plural, lo haya tzivui lishnehem, was not actually a commandment to both of them, to Aharon and Moshe. No. Ela lefi shehem hayu regilim bekach, rather because Aharon and Moshe were already used to this. They had a certain custom in many occasions. They had certain customs in many occasions that what? Lachlok kavod ze lazeh bishar hazmanim. They used to give kavod to each other every single time one of them had to speak. They would start tarofing. You guys know what tarofing is? So for those non-Persian speakers, it's basically this Persian custom of, you're about to enter a building, two people trying to go together. It's going to take like 30 seconds to decide who's going to enter the building first. So it's like, I was like, oh, you go ahead. No, please, no, I'm not. And sometimes it ends up with one person just leaving. Like, I'm not going to go. I'm not even going to enter this building. I'm done. It's like, it's a way of giving respect, right? Moshe Rabbeinu and Aharon HaKohen, throughout their life, kept giving each other kavod. Now imagine, it was already set, right? The plagues are pretty much done. There's one more plague left. And Moshe Rabbeinu is already the leader of Am Yisrael. There's been recognition of that by Paro, everybody. Aharon HaKohen, everybody, right? So no one's getting hurt here anymore. No one's being bothered by the fact that Aharon is the one who was chosen. I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who was chosen. However, they still had respect for each other, where Moshe Rabbeinu would tell Aharon, you know what? You go ahead and teach it. No, Moshe, you go ahead and teach it. No, you do better. No, you do better. Imagine every single time there was such kavod, where so much so that the Zera Shimshon says, finally, even Hashem caught up to it and said, because you guys constantly give so much respect to each other, where when I'm telling Moshe Rabbeinu to say something, there is a sense of kavod from Moshe Rabbeinu giving to his older brother, and he offers his older brother to do it, that's how I'm going to give the command also. Daberu, both of you. You choose who's going to do it. It's up to you. Imagine, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could say, Habibi, I have jobs for Aharon, HaKohen, and I have jobs for Moshe Rabbeinu. Listen, Moshe, I want you to do this. Just imagine, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can say, I've chosen Moshe Rabbeinu for this job. This is what you're going to do. But he doesn't. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I like what you're doing. So I'm just going to leave it up to you. Taberu, go ahead. You come up with whichever way you feel you want to do it. You want Aharon to do it, Aharon HaKohen will do it. You want Moshe Rabbeinu to do it, Moshe Rabbeinu will do it. It's unbelievable. So this pasuk is really coming to show us their praiseworthiness in this matter of having so much respect. So when I was doing this Zera Shimshon, it reminded me of several occasions that we've seen this in modern times with Chachamim of our generation, Chachamim of the older generation. You know, the incredible respect Chachamim had for each other. Let's go back all the way, okay? Our oral tradition, which is the Mishnayot and the Gemara, come from two houses of study. These two houses of study were named after two individuals. One was Hillel, and the other was Shammai. Hillel and Shammai. There were two of the greatest Chachamim of the generation of the Second Temple period. And then their school of thought became called Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. The house of Hillel, house of Shammai. If you look in all of Mishnayot and Gemara, you will find a lot of occasions where Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are arguing. Sometimes over fundamental stuff, fundamental things they're arguing about. Beit Hillel could say black, Beit Shammai would be like white. That's how far distant some of their ideas are in halacha. And we have a rule. The rule is whenever there is a difference of opinion between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, 90% of the time we follow Beit Hillel. That's where the halacha follows. There are very, very minute halachic differences, halachic times that we follow Beit Shammai, and even those are written in the Gemara. Like here are the few, just a few, that we follow Beit Shammai. All the other ones, we follow Beit Hillel. And if you look at the things that they discuss and they differ on, you would think like, dude, these people probably lived on two different, like, they wouldn't even walk on the same sidewalk. People from the house of study of Beit Shammai and the people from the house of study of Beit Hillel wouldn't even like, when they would see each other in the place, it was like, what? What'd you say? You know, like, you want a piece of me? You want to be? But amazing part about it is, I'll give you an example. For instance, there are discussions between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel when it comes to lineage. And for instance, who's allowed to marry whom? Which man is allowed to marry which woman? They're not. So much so that in certain instances, according to Beit Shammai, let's say, if A marries B, their child is a bastard. Where Beit Hillel would hold, if A marries B, nothing wrong with it. Perfectly kosher child. That's how far different they were, right? Now, those that held at that time, according to Beit Shammai, they abided by the laws of the Beit Shammai. Our rabbi is Beit Shammai, and he says, like, we're not allowed to marry into these families. And those that abided by Beit Hillel would hold, we're allowed to marry into these families, and it's fine. Here's the beauty of it. When there were cases of that situation happening in any side of the spectrum of whether it was Beit Shammai or Beit Hillel, they would give information to Beit Hillel and say, by the way, you have someone from your house that is dating so-and-so, you should know, according to your view, it's not allowed. You shouldn't do it. And then they would tell the other side also, by the way, you have families and you da-da-da-da. According to your view, it's not allowed. They worked so well with each other. They had so much love and respect because, for about 90% of the laws that we don't follow, which are Beit Shammai, but they're all written in the Gemara, they're all written in the Mishnayot. Why? You have to ask yourself, why? We don't follow it. Why not just be like, Beit Hillel says this, done. Beit Hillel says that, done. And in the times that we follow Beit Shammai, okay, Beit Shammai says this, we follow Beit Shammai. Why is Beit Shammai included in, and it's a lot. Why is it included? Because they had a lot of zechut. There was never any disrespect between these two houses of thought and the Chachamim. Never. They loved each other. They married into each other when there was a possibility, right? But that didn't happen that often. That was a problem with marriage, but they married into each other. It didn't matter. It wasn't like, oh, he's this or she's that or he's Sephardi. No, there was none of that at all. Those two completely different ways of thinking about oral tradition, but there was so much respect between the two. They respected each other. They worked with each other. They learned together. You know how difficult it is for two people to learn together when they know that their philosophy is so different? Right? Rav Ovadia Yosef Zatzal had his best friend was Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul Zatzal. They grew up together. Like from childhood, they grew up together until they became chavrutot, they became learning partners together in yeshiva, until they became the leaders of a generation together. Rav Ovadia Yosef going and becoming the chief rabbi of Israel and one of the greatest sages, and Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul was no less. He wasn't chosen as the chief rabbi, right? But he was no less whatsoever. But when you see in their Sfarim, most of the time, Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul is always, most of the time, goes more according to like the Kabbalistic view of things, right? Which a lot of times differs from the simpler way of looking at halacha. Rav Ovadia Yosef Zatzal was always pashut halacha. Simple halacha is, don't go into Kabbalistic stuff. You don't have, according to simple Shulchan Aruch, this is the halacha. And you see it a lot. Rav Ovadia Yosef says this, Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul says that. You want to see what it means to be great? When Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul passed away, go watch the eulogy that Rav Ovadia Yosef gave about his closest friend, who he argued with about everything. He felt he couldn't, he's like, who am I going to learn with now? They argued about fundamental halachic principles, but they were the greatest of friends. So much respect for each other. There's a famous story that Rav Ovadia Yosef was invited to, I don't think, a wedding or a banquet or something like that. And then Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul gets there and they say hello and that. And then all of a sudden Rav Ovadia starts looking for Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul and he tells people like, go find out where did Rav Ben Zion go. I want to make sure he has a ride home, because at that time Rav Ovadia already had drivers, right? And not everybody got cars and stuff in Eretz Yisrael, no matter. But Rav Ovadia had a driver now, right? So he tells his drivers, go find where did Rav Ben Zion? I want to be able to. So they go searching. They find him. I'm not kidding. This is in old age already. He was hiding. So then they ask him, why were you hiding? He's like, I knew Rav Ovadia is going to trouble himself and he's going to want to give me a ride home. So I'd rather be hiding for him to just go, not to have to give me a ride. It was in these were giants of the generation worrying about, I don't want to chas v'shalom trouble you to to. Where do they learn it from? Moshe and Aharon. Moshe Rabbeinu, to begin with, was arguing with Hashem. Hashem, don't send me. I don't want to go bring the Jews out. Why? I have an older brother, Aaron. He's so much better. He speaks so much better. Right? So much so that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to intervene and be like, listen, trust me. I know people's hearts. And Aaron's truly happy for you. And that's beautiful. How Hashem has to attest to the fact that I know the inside of your people's hearts, and I'm telling you, your brother Aharon loves you, and he's going to be so happy for you. And we see it again. We see it again, the relationship that they had, where they were literally offering each other, no, please, b'chavod, you go ahead and give the halacha over. No, you go ahead. You would have thought like, okay, it's over. We got the duo. I'm the leader and you're the second in command, let's say, right? Anybody else would have already kind of like put that into place, like this is going to be our duo. But they didn't. They were still arguing about who's going to do it. And our chachamim, till this very generation, that's where they learned from. That's where they're learning from. If you see, if you see that someone's not acting that way, know that there's something wrong in that situation. Because true Torah scholars have utmost respect for each other. Always. Always. I've seen it. When Torah comes into play, when spirituality comes into play, kavod, self-respect, and arrogance has to go out the door. Has to. I don't know if I've ever spoken about the Yenuka here with you guys. You know about the Yenuka? Who knows who the Yenuka is? Nobody? Okay.
He knows the Torah very well.
Huh?
He knows the Torah very well.
Right. He's I think by now he's like 35, 34 years old. Okay, I mean, he's incredible. In Eretz Yisrael, they call him the Yenuka. His name is Rav Yehuda something, I believe. No one ever says his name. They just call him Yenuka. Yenuka means the young child prodigy. Like, that's what it comes from. He's a genius. He knows all of the Torah by heart. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, he knows. He gave a siyum. You know what a siyum is? When you finish a tractate of Gemara, let's say, tractate of Talmud, you give a siyum, you give a part. He gave a siyum that I had never heard in my life before. Because at the end of the siyum, when you finish that tractate, you stand up in front of everybody and you go and hadran alach, we will come back to you and say, we've just finished Masechet Brachot. Hadran alach, Masechet Brachot, I just finished Masechet Brachot, right? I'd never heard someone go, Hadran alach Rambam, Hadran alach Shulchan Aruch, Hadran alach Mishnayot, Hadran alach. It was, he mamash has given siyums on kol Torah kulo, like from Kabbalah to like everything. And he's this genius. He's a musician, which gives you a lot, because music is very Kabbalistic. He plays nigunim on a keyboard, and he says this was sung by the Gaon Mivilna, and it was also taken by listen to this rhythm. It heals the neshama. And then he starts. You feel like you're by an ocean. I'm not even joking with you. It's like it's. People have gone to him. He's done miracles for people, telling them like people that have had problems. I mean, search him up on YouTube. You'll see. There's Yenuka. YANUK. I think so. Yeah. Young person. So now he has Torah. When you do search him on YouTube, you will notice when he goes to speaking arrangements, you will see chachamim, roshei yeshivot, people with white beards that have their own entourage. They come up to him and they kiss his hand. There's a 30-something-year-old guy, black beard, okay, has rosh yeshivas with white beards that have their own entire yeshivot coming in front of him, like kissing in hand, getting brachot to him. Why? Because when it comes to Torah, it's not about my respect. It's about mutual respect. You have spirituality that I respect. This is not a competition. Not at all. We want what you want. And if you can do it better, how can I help? That's basically what it is. How can we help? And you'll see an entire room of 1,000 people fill up. There's people literally by the walls, like wall to wall, packed room listening for like 2 hours. from speaking about, and something that interesting that I've noticed personally is that he speaks a lot about the Malchut of Hashem, kingship of Hashem, which is a subject for Messianic times. So, I'm just going to slip that in there. So what I'm trying to tell you is that you see when you watch these videos, sometimes I get very emotional watching it. You see the kavod that Chachamim have for each other, young or old, it doesn't matter. It's just respect because of the spiritual information that you have, because of the work that you are doing. I don't know if this guy sleeps. I really don't know. First of all, when he was young, he was a secret. They didn't tell anybody that he didn't want anyone to know that he had this gift he was a genius of learning. But then I think in one of his speeches, he says for a long time, he didn't even want to come out. He didn't want anyone to know about him. But times made it so that he has a mission now to teach, right? But you would think that if this was a competition, people would come up and be like, who's this guy? Okay, so he has a photographic memory. Who's this guy? So turns out that when you're tested by the Chachamim and you carry your weight and you know Torah and you have the midot, the characteristics of a good person at the same time, you give respect to other people, it catches on. Some people, yes, could have a photographic memory, but their attitude just, I don't like you. You could literally tell so fine. The guy's got a mathematical mind. I don't respect that. Sure, go and browse through 10 Sfarim and you know the whole thing by heart. You don't impress me. What has to come with it is the change of character, which you see in him, right? It's not like he doesn't wait there for people to come and kiss his hand. I mean, oh my gosh, you should see. There's a thing. Sometimes he's pulling their hand, they're pulling his hand. He's like, no, please. Chachamim, elderly, 80-year-old Chachamim come, and there's a large table of these Chachamim and Dayanim sitting, waiting for him. So he comes, and the greatest of them comes and shows him his chair. And the older Rav is standing there waiting for him to sit. He goes, you sit. He goes, no, you sit first. He goes, no, you sit first. No, bechavod. Okay, and then they grab each other's hand and go, we sit together. You know? Who do we learn that from? Moshe and Aharon. The Torah has to change you. The Torah has to change the character of a person. The Torah is not like mathematics or the sciences, or it's not information. The Torah has to change who you are from the inside. If you know thousands of pages of Gemara and Kabbalah, but it doesn't change who you are, it doesn't change your character, I'm sorry, it's nothing. It's zero. It's just information. Information doesn't make you holy. You need to help yourself to take the information in and make changes to you. And that was Aaron HaKohen, that was Moshe Rabbeinu, that's our Chachamim. There are a lot of people out there, believe me, in the past and today, that have a lot, I will admit, have a lot of Torah knowledge. But I'm sorry, it means nothing. Because if your character is flawed, you're an embarrassment to the Torah. Because the Torah is something holy that's supposed to make you a better person. You know, it needs to do something to you. That's why there's a Mishnah. Derech Eretz Qadma leTorah. Derech Eretz, respect comes before Torah. Why? Because if you don't have respect, if you're not kind, if you're not a good person, you're going to be disrespectful to the Torah. You're going to be a defective thing on the Torah itself. You're a walking Chilul Hashem. You become a walking Chilul Hashem. Especially when two Chachamim, that God forbid, they don't get along. And Chas v'Shalom, they are disrespectful to each other. If you, God forbid, I haven't seen it, but if you see two rabbis fighting each other and being disrespectful to each other, do you respect any of them? No, because you naturally think that's not the way it's supposed to be. You know, holy people don't act like that. If one of them was holier than the other, he would probably walk away from that conversation. That's how you always know how to choose between the two signs. And the beauty of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel was the amount of arguments, colossal arguments that they had with each other, but at the same time, their families married into each other. If there was a problem that one of them couldn't marry the other one, they would tell them, hey, by the way, according to your laws, you can't marry this one, I can't marry that. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And that's what Am Yisrael is, and that's what Torah is. Torah Emet. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.
Is it name Rabbi